Greetings, film fans. Ready for what I consider the most preeminently awesome travel buddy action physical landscape geography film to use for our World Regions class? Hope so, because this game is on tonight with today's feature called Motorcycle Diaries from 2004. So it's over a decade old, but guess what? Doesn't matter. It's a historical piece that's actually based on real events and a real person that I'll bet you at least recognize by sight if you don't know his name. That would be Ernesto Che Guevara, the iconic image that everybody recognizes of Che Guevara, whether you know his story or not. But let me introduce this film, and we'll get to the Che Guevara stuff and his story after the fact, after you watch this pretty awesome film. So it was from 2004. Directed by this Brazilian guy, I believe, named Walter Salles. He's one of my favorite directors. Just does phenomenal, great work. Really uses the physical landscape of wherever his films are as part of the action, and his cinematography is wonderful. So whether you love this film or hate this film or could care less about Che Guevara or love Che Guevara, just look at the physical landscapes that are presented in this film. It's worth it just to watch that. So I said it was based on real events. It is. It's based on journal entries by Ernesto Che Guevara himself. He wrote a diary in his earlier years, I guess maybe his whole life. And him and his traveling companion, another real person named Alberto Granada, also wrote down lots of notes and looked over the screenplay. So this is basically a epic travel biopic that is based on real travels that these two guys did when they were younger men. Now, the film is about 130 minutes long. I know, it's terrible. That's over 2 hours. Trust me, hang in there. It's worth it. It is, again, an adventure, biography, drama. It really doesn't go into too much of Che Guevara's life or what he's famous for as a Marxist revolutionary and a guy who was involved heavily in the Cuban Revolution and did all these other revolutionary activities and was eventually killed by the CIA. It doesn't go into any of that. It goes into the formative years when this guy was young and this road trip that him and Alberto Granada did across all of South America. And again, it's why it's such a great film for our World Regions class, is because it takes place in multiple countries across South America, and it's filmed on location in all of the places that they say they are. I love that when a filmmaker does that. Everybody wants to CGI stuff anymore, and everything's so fake, you never know what's what, but this is an old enough film, and they wanted to make it authentic. So everywhere that they suggest they are in this film, and by the way, pay attention to the little subtitles, they'll tell you along the entire journey of this movie where they're at, in the corner, and what mile they're on, because they travel over 12,000 kilometers during this movie, and they put it in the bottom corner what city and about how far along in their journey they are. So pay attention to that, and do take note that wherever they say they are, they are. All right, they went all across South America to make this beautiful piece of work that, again, is based on some historical fact. But facts later. Let's get to just the travel part of it first. Where all do they go on this adventure? These young guys, I think Che is maybe 23 when the film starts, and Alberto is supposed to be about 30. They're medical students who are going to take a little hiatus, take a little road trip. Maybe you contemplated doing this as well when you graduated high school or after you get out of college. Maybe you want to take some time off and road trip across Europe or across China or across Latin America, and that's what these two did in this film. So they're going to start, they are Argentinians. Walter Salles, the filmmaker, is a Brazilian guy, but Che Guevara and Alberto Granada are Argentinians, okay? So they're going to start in Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. And they're from upper middle class, make no bones about it. And that's important to note before you watch this film too. Medical students, going to be doctors from upper middle class, if not upper class Argentinian society. Okay? They're not poor people, but they're going to have a road trip and go party, okay? So they're going to start in Buenos Aires, okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and list all these places off to you, and then I'll highlight some of the areas of particular note that I want you to keep in your head where they're at. So they start in Buenos Aires. They really do start the filming in Buenos Aires. And the actual filming locations for this awesome film are in Argentina, They start in Buenos Aires. They go to Miramar, Argentina, which is on the coast, a coastal city. Then Villa Gesell, San Martin de los Andes, a place called Lago Frias, a big lake up in the Andes. That's in Patagonia. In Chile, they're in Temuco, Los Angeles, Chile, Valparaiso, Chile, the Atacama Desert in Chile, and a very famous copper mine I'll get to in just a second. It's an actual real copper mine in Chile. In Peru, they're going to go to Cusco, to Machu Picchu, to Lima, the current capital. They're also going to go to a place called the San Pablo leper colony that's also in the in the Amazonian section of Peru. That's a real place as well, filmed on location. And then they also filmed some in Leticia, Colombia, and just briefly in Caracas, Venezuela. So, it's a travel film. It's a buddy film based on real events and real people's lives. It's got everything I love for world regions movies. So, pay attention to this. Follow along on the map to place it in your brain where they're moving throughout the course of the film. And they did this road trip in real life. This is a very, very historically accurate depiction of what actually transpired. Okay, now we can't speak to what Che Guevara was actually thinking in his mind, but the details of where they're at, the stunts they do, the fights they get into, this has all been historically verified. It's a very accurate depiction, and I love that about film as well, this particular film. Okay, so they're going to start in Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. They're going to get on a motorcycle, the mighty one, and they're going to head almost due south to Miramar, which is a coastal city. They actually don't show the ocean in the film. That's okay. It's they hang out in some rich people's houses in Miramar, and you're along the way from Buenos Aires to Miramar, due south. They're going to cross pampas, grasslands that are going to look, if you've ever been to the Midwestern United States, kind of like grasslands there. The pampas, Pampas, is this big grassland area of Argentina, very productive for wheat and barley and cattle. Argentina is very famous for its cattle production, really high-end beef. And so it's very similar to, say, Midwestern United States, the grasslands, the pampas and plains of Argentina. Then they're going to head almost due west, okay, across these same plains and pampas into the beginnings of the Andes Mountains, okay? So they're still in Argentina as they head due west to Piedra del Aguila, also to San Martin de los Andes. They're going to start going up the mountains, and as they start increasing in elevation, they're going to depart the lowland plains and grassland pampas into more steppe-like and more barren and drier and colder areas of Argentina. And they're indeed going to cross over the Argentinian-Chilean border in a place that they're calling Lagos Frios. I'm not exactly sure where that's at in real life. Couldn't pinpoint it exactly, but I have no doubt it exists somewhere. And when they get that far up into the Andes, and actually that far south in Argentina and Chile, you're in this area called Patagonia. It's a steppe-like, almost subarctic area that is quite cold. Everybody thinks, I won't say everybody, a lot of folks that don't know South America, don't know their South American geography, just think, oh, well, South America's got the rainforest, the Amazon rainforest, and it's all tropical down there. I love this film because it shows you southern South America first, which is very much a temperate, mid-latitude temperate region, much like the areas of planet Earth we live in here in Virginia, all the way up to, say, New York. You're going to see it depicted, and as they go into the mountain, up the mountains, it gets super freaking cold because the Andes, of course, are the gigantic mountain range spine of South America, really of all Latin America, because it kind of runs through Central America as well. And the Andes is the longest continental mountain range on planet Earth. It's a continual range of highlands along the western coast of South America, and it averages, the range is about 7,000 kilometers long, about 4,300 miles of continuous mountain range and high mountains. This isn't like the Appalachians, okay? This is more like the Rockies. In fact, they're higher than the Rocky Mountains in western United States. So on average height, about 4,000 meters above sea level, that's 12 to 13,000 feet is the average high peaks. And you're going to see what life at 10,000 feet above sea level looks like, especially that far south, because it's cold, it's frigid, it's subarctic to Arctic when they're going over the top of that sucker. It's snowing, and many of the peaks of the Andes remain snow-capped throughout the year, even the ones that are in the near the equator, near the Amazon. When you get that high up, it's just cold all the time. So you get this wonderful display of road tripping across Argentina, then into Chile. You see all these wonderful climates and biomes, different physical environments. But that's just the start of the fun. Once they get into Chile, then they're actually going to head pretty much due north. Okay, so due north, they're going to go through the capital of Chile briefly. They're going to go to some small towns, but then they're going to go into the Atacama Desert. And the Atacama Desert, you probably never heard of that either if you don't know South America. It's the driest desert on planet Earth. So it's in northern Chile, and the Atacama, I think there's some parts of the Atacama where they've had meteorological stations to collect rainfall amounts and be able and collect temperature data. In some parts of the Atacama for 100 years, it hasn't rained yet. Dude, that's dry. All right, so it's not a huge desert, but in the whole northern section of northern Chile is this barren, awesome, super dry, full-on desert. Not sand dune desert, but like mountainous desert. And they're going to go through the heart of that, and they're going to visit a very specific site called the Chuquicamata. The Chuquicamata copper mine, often just shortened to Chuqui. The Chuqui mine is a real-life copper mine that's been in production since before the events of this movie take place. So this film, I should have referenced it up front, but you'll see it's supposed to be in 1952. And so they go to the Chuqui mine. It's the biggest open pit copper mine on planet Earth. Was then, still is in today's world. Located north of Chile in Atacama Desert. Over 9,000 feet above sea level. And copper, you should note, is long been the most consistent of Chilean exports. Back in the day when this film was made, portrayed, the events of this film portrayed, but also in today's world, copper's huge for Chile. Huge, 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 big deal. Almost 1/3, I think, of foreign trade still. It used to be like 75% of their exports were copper-based. So Chile, huge copper producer, and this particular Chuqui mine is gigantic. It's staggering, the scale you're getting ready to see of this copper mine. And they really do it on location. They also, of course, visit the iconic, awesome Incan ruins of Machu Picchu, which is in Peru. So they're going to keep going further north on the west side of the Andes into Peru. If you don't know anything about the Inca, 15th century Inca site is Machu Picchu, one of the classic civilizations that was in the Americas before the Spaniards came over and destroyed them all. And that's referenced in the film. Just watch this film for nothing else besides the beautiful scenery of Machu Picchu. It's outstanding. Then they're also going to proceed further north into Peru, and they're going to cross back over the Andes Mountains to be on the east side, which is the Amazon. So one side of Peru, one side of the Andes is in Peru, is one type of climate, and you go over. Now you're in true tropical rainforest, and that's where they go to the San Pablo leper colony that's in full on the Amazon River basin. They're actually going to get on a raft and start floating down the Amazon for just a little bit, and then they're briefly going to pop into Caracas, Venezuela, as they get on a plane to depart. So they don't really show much of Venezuela. I'm just throwing in there that yes, they actually are on location for all these places, even the throwaway part in the last 60 seconds of the film. So, brief summary of the physical geography. I haven't even talked about the cultural geography. I'm just going to let you watch that, okay? But the physical geography breakdown as you go through these actual places portrayed in the film and filmed on location. You start in the humid subtropical areas around Buenos Aires that are much like Virginia. You go into the Pampas, the grasslands, the plains, much like the Midwestern United States. Then you go into the Andes Mountains, the steppe-like plains, much like going deeper west in the United States, going up into the Rockies. The Rockies are actually much smaller than the Andes, but you're going to go up into subarctic areas of the Andes and then back over. Then you're going to go into true desert, which I guess you could also say is in the western United States if you go deep enough west into the Great Basin. So the only thing that's different about travel in South America as opposed to traveling across the United States is that if you go far enough north in South America, you run into that tropical rainforest, the Amazon River Basin, the biggest tropical rainforest on planet Earth with the biggest river system on planet Earth, the Amazon. So that's where it gets quite unique, but everything up to that point is like, oh wow, it's just a really great travel log of things that are going on, places they see. Now, the cultural things to pay attention to, I'm not really going to go into detail because they are inherent. The major theme of the movie is talking about is referencing how all of these countries of South America and Latin America as a whole, but let's just say South America, are all different countries, and no one's really sure why. They all share a common history, a common language, except for the Brazilians, which speak Portuguese, a common religion, just a shared base of values, and a lot of folks wonder, how come there's not a United States of South America? And that's a good question that's pondered throughout this film. The other major thing that's portrayed throughout the film, and the real drive, the cultural drive of this film, is wealth disparity. How can there be in a land so rich with natural resources and so much land and so much wealth and so much stuff, how can there be so many poor people? And that's a theme of the time. In 1952, when Ernesto Che Guevara was traveling through South America, it's a theme in today's world for this particular region on planet Earth. So it's a theme that apparently is timeless. And even though lots of places in South America are doing better than they were in 1950, it's still a major theme that there are very few people that have a lot and a whole lot of people that don't have much. And you're going to see how that particular situation affected one Ernesto Che Guevara in the early formative years of his life, as he did a real-life road trip across South America. And you're getting ready to watch that road trip right now. We'll see you on the back end of 2 hours afterwards for a few closing thoughts on Che and what this film was really all about, or at least trying to teach you some stuff about. Cool? Cool. Enjoy the film. I think you will. From 2004, Motorcycle Diaries.